This is Jablam Hockey with your hosts, Peter Wojcicki and Paul Swinbeck. Welcome to Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Wojcicki. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and I am with
Paul Zwambag. You can find me at Zwambag, ZWAMBAG. How's it going, everybody? Peter, what is up?
I'm excited! Are you excited?
I don't know what we're excited about, but yeah, I'm excited.
Well, we're going to be doing the deadline show, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. That's going to come out in a couple of days. Pre-trade deadline show special. We've got a couple of guests, all from our Team ISOs. We're bringing them back. We're putting them in. They're going to talk a little bit about what their teams wants or, trade values for the guys that are rumored to be going. So stay tuned for that. But Paul, let's get a little bit into how did we do on our Saturday's picks last week?
Oh, I did all right. You did not very well.
Yeah, I was struggling. I thought, after like the first 2-3 games, they were all upsets, right? We both lost the first
we
three or
lost
four
the first
games, right?
4 games. Yeah.
I thought, okay, it's all over. I'm going to lose. I thought I was going to lose every single game that I didn't even want to follow. I knew the Leafs were playing. I'm like, the Leafs might win or lose. And the Leafs, they had the lead. Then they collapsed the course again. So close. So I lost that one, of course, because you had to pick against me.
Yep.
And then I thought, it was all over. Yeah.
I went 6-5. You went 4-7. So we are 99-81 and 98-82. You got the one win over me.
It's close. It's tough, especially with these upsets, man. You can't expect them in the NHL. They just happen every day, all the time. It's crazy. So hard to predict.
Yeah, and last week we talked about going against Tampa Bay because Atcha, our Team ISO guest from Raw Charge, was talking it down that Tampa Bay is terrible, and so I go and pick Tampa Bay because they've been winning, and they lose. Ugh.
Yeah.
They are the death of me. Stupid Lightning.
Oh, man. Yeah, but Bishop is playing better, so they might put a bit of a late charge into it, but it might be a little too late. But the other team in the division, we will be Team IceWing later on in the episode. The Florida Panthers with special guest Todd Little of LitterBoxCats.com, so you can check out that. What else we have this episode? We're doing a friendly bet, me and Paul. You probably went on our Twitter website at Jablam Hockey. We put out the poll. We try to put out a poll almost every week. And, of course, this week it was which team will win the Atlantic. So stay tuned for that. I've got my top 10 biggest trade deadline trades of the current decade. Paul thought I was going to pick, Hossa and Dupuis in 08-09. No, that's not this decade. Right, Paul?
Yes, that is correct. I was totally confused. And then you explained it to me, and I was like, current decade, so
yes,
not past 10 years, just this decade.
So check that out on JablamHockey.com. I'll mention a few of them later on in the episode, and we have a fantasy tip. All right, first, trending now. Paul, your Pens, huge, massive, blockbuster trade. What happened?
It's only the beginning, Peter. We are going after every defenseman available. Come on, Shattenkirk. No, we need a defenseman. We got a lot of guys hurt. Daly's out for 6 weeks with
6 weeks
with surgery.
Wow.
Mata's out for 6 weeks. Supposedly, they're shutting him down until the playoffs. They're pulling the whole Patrick Kane from a couple of years ago, or last year. Was that last year? They shut him down till the playoffs.
I don't know if it was last year, maybe the year before.
Yeah, so they're going to pull that. They're going to stack their team because they will save salary cap, and their playoff team will be way over salary. So hopefully they can find something else out there as well.
So how many injuries did the Pens have in the back end right now?
Daly, Mata, Schultz has got a concussion. He practiced today, and Letang is day-to-day. Our top 4 D-men gone.
All down.
Yeah, not good.
Who do you expect to step up?
I don't really know. I thought they were going to call up Derek Pouliot. Clearly, he's in the doghouse of the entire Penguins organization. So I have
Wow.
a feeling he's going to move because there's no way this is his opportunity to take the reins, and I don't think it's going to happen. I guess Ian Colt, Ron Hainsey. We're going to have to count on Ron Hainsey. Should be an interesting couple of days before we get somebody. Supposedly, our analyst guy, Jason Cormanos, is at the Nashville-Colorado game tonight, so maybe he's scouting Tyson Barrie? That'd be sweet.
Yeah, for sure. He's gone. Colorado's gonna trade everybody, right?
Yeah, they're selling. They're a big fire.
So the other guys that were traded recently, Stone of the Coyotes went to the Flames, so they're getting some more defensive depth there. And the Leafs make a small trade with getting Kalinin from the Devils for Victor Louvre. I think at one point Victor Louvre was projected as maybe the best Marley defenseman, and it seems like he's dropped down on that depth chart, at least for this season. And I think that's why they were willing to move him and to get a guy like Kalinin for Leafs. Of course, send him. Yeah, go ahead.
And why wouldn't they just claim Kalinin on waivers?
Because they're at the max roster, right?
So they got to move a player out. That makes sense.
That's why. Yeah, Leafs have so many guys in their roster. It's maxed out.
Is
down there, up
going
there.
To make the team in the next 2 years?
In the Leafs, yeah, for sure, I would think.
Yeah.
They're going to just put the Marlies at least probably for the rest of this year. And, of course, we'll see what happens with training camp next year and see if they can bring him up and fill in a role. And he could be just another piece of the puzzle to be moved when they're thinking about trading some of the other guys, because they've got a lot of kids they want to bring up with, Kapanen and Lepsic and the rest of them.
True. Are they getting in on the Colorado tire sale?
You know what? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so.
You're going to have to listen to our pre-trade deadline show bonus episode. We'll talk more about it.
We will. We'll mention some of those Avalanche guys and maybe what the Leafs will do.
Awesome.
All right. And then also, did you see it, Paul? Did you see the new KHL promo that I think it was who did it? It was the CKA.
I did not.
They put out. Oh, okay. So we're gonna put this on our games notes, folks, just as long with everything that we've talked about. But here's a little audio. Okay, the audio itself already sounds amazing in my opinion, but it's so cool. They've got all the great players. I think Datsuk and Kovalchuk are in there. Even Voinov, ex-LA King guy, he's in the promo. The promo is so cool. Of course, if you haven't, followed the KHL, the playoffs have started, and the promo is cool, and it makes me hyped up even for the NHL playoffs coming up. But for the KHL, it looks great. And I hope my team does well. I think they're leading 1-0 in their series.
Did your boy Mosiakin make the promo?
Well, he's not for their team.
Oh,
he plays for
gotcha.
Metalurg Magnitogorsk, and as I like to call them, the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL, because Metalurg is a metal city. It's a steel town type city, and they're also a perennial good team with Mosiakin and a few of those other guys when they came when the NHL strike was last. A few of the good players went to their team, and they were a really good team, and they still are. So I'm hoping they go pretty far. Is there a team that you like in the KHL, Paul?
I'm going to go with Locomotive. You asked me to pick a team, and I'm going to go with Locomotive. just because of the storyline from a couple of years back. Yeah. I don't think I've ever watched. I'm not sure if I watched KHL. I can't remember the last KHL game I've watched. I've watched highlights and stuff, but not a full game, no.
Yeah. I try to watch a few games, but I always watch the highlights.
I go to the Liga or an SHL over KHL for some reason. Mm-hmm. Not sure why.
Yeah. But yeah, the promo's great. Check it out. It's on JablamHockey.com, our game notes. But yeah, it makes me hyped up even for the NHL playoffs coming up. I can't wait. All right, time for this week's segment of Team ISO. We're Team ISOing the Florida Panthers. We have special guest Todd Little from the Litterbox Cats, litterboxcats.com. You can catch him there, and he's also on Twitter at Todd Little 827. So that's TODDLITTLE 827. We're also, obviously, it's going to be in our games notes. You can follow him right there from Jablam Hockey, and we will send this out on Twitter, of course. So, Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Pretty good. Let's get right into it. How do you like how the Panthers are playing lately?
It's much better now. I mean, everybody was about ready to jump ship probably 2-3 weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. You know, things were looking pretty grim as far as making the playoffs go. But, you know, magically, you know, the team gets healthy and it's a totally different team. You know, what do you know?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Is it mainly because Huberdeau is back and Barkov is also healthy and they're just clicking right now?
Yeah, well, right before those two guys came back, they also got back Alex Petrovic, who's probably their best defensive defenseman because they have a lot of, you know, more offense-minded defensemen, you know, this year than they did last year. And they also got Nick Bjugstad back, which, you know, is another, you know, he's not scoring like he did a couple years ago, but I mean, he's another quality forward, you know, so that's one less AHL player that was on the roster. So, I mean, getting those four guys back in a short span of time has made a big difference.
For sure. Let's get into then with the offseason additions. How has Yandel looked so far? He looks like he's playing well statistically, and is he exactly what the Cats maybe needed for their back end?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the Panthers, I mean, you know, like a lot of people down here were down on what the front office did in the off season, especially once, you know, a couple guys went out of the lineup and they got off to a bad start. But I think if you look at all these guys that they added, statistically, you know, they're all doing pretty well, you know, but you know, when you add, you know, when you turn over half the roster, you know, there's going to be an adjustment period. So I think a lot of people discounted that part of things a little bit, and they expected the team to come out, you know, guns blazing from the start of the season. And you know, then a couple guys got hurt, and then as the season went on, a couple more guys got hurt, you know. And you know, and when you couple those two things together, that, you know, when you look at things now that you see the full lineup in place, you see like, okay, well, a lot of this was the injuries, but you know, the team did need some time to gel together. And I think by adding like so many like rushing type defensemen too, like, you know, when the team got off to a slow start, I think those guys were trying to do too much to make up for the lack of scoring from the forwards, and it was causing problems, you know, defensively, you know, where the team would play, you know, pretty good for the most part for a game, but then, you know, they'd get caught out of position a few times, and you know, you give up a couple goals and you lose 3-2, you know, and then, you know, then that's what everybody's focusing on. But I think once they started to take care of their own, you know, make a concerted effort to take care of their own end, that's when things really started to turn around. And then once they got healthy again, now you see like, okay, this team is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And is Demers also fitting well on the back end there too?
Yeah, he's playing pretty good. You know, I think it's really coming together. You know, would they have been better off not getting rid of both Goodbranson and Kulikov? Yeah, it probably would have been better to keep one of those guys, you know, in hindsight. But, you know, I think that's one thing that maybe they need to do at the trade deadline is add one more, you know, defensive defenseman that can thump a little bit and clear out in front of the net a little bit. It would be a help, even if it's just as a seventh defenseman to spell these guys so they don't have to put, you know, Kindle in there in case somebody gets hurt. I think that would be an improvement. He's
too thin on the back end to help them in that type of role, I guess. Yeah. But with those guys kind of playing better, just what's going on with Ekblad then? Is he just having a rough year? or is it just,
if you look at his stats, you think, yeah, he's having a rough year. I mean, he's got a bad plus minus rating, but a lot of that's from the first, let's say half of the season now. He's right now, I think he's minus 18, but over the last 20 games, I mean, I don't know what he was last night. I actually don't know what his plus minus was last night, but as of yesterday morning, he was -1 over the last 20 games. So it's been an adjustment for him too, not playing with Brian Campbell anymore. So, Campbell covered up a lot for him, the first couple years. So, he's had to learn to, do a lot more on his own and not just, be worried about, providing offense.
Yeah.
But he's definitely shown a lot of improvement the last couple of weeks, as has the whole team for that matter.
Perfect. And then in between the pipes, you've got Luongo injured now, and me being a Leaf fan, we've always kind of enjoyed Mr. James Reimer. How's he been fitting in well now with the Panthers?
He's been playing good. I actually like Reimer. I think he's a really good goalie. There's a few people on the site that have commented that Reimer is good until you start putting pressure on him, and then he kind of folds, which is funny considering they lost 4-3 to Edmonton, and before that I think he had won like 5 or 6 starts in a row, and then he gave up 4 last night. Not all his fault, but I'm just like, wait a minute, maybe these guys, maybe there's something to that. But I like Reimer. He's been both goalies have been playing good. I mean, there's been definite times where Luongo went through a little spell, a while back where he had a few games where he wasn't quite as sharp, and that's happened here and there to Reimer too. But for the most part, especially while the team was dealing with having 4 quality guys out of the lineup, those guys definitely stole a lot of points for the Panthers. Both of them, both of them did.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Reimer because even if he is having an off night, he's a battler. He'll fight no matter what.
Yeah.
He'll fight hard for you back there.
Yeah, I like Reimer. I mean, there were some people that, especially when things were going bad for the team, that were like, what, why did we sign this guy, for 5 years and for a decent amount of money? But I think he's a good goalie, and I see the sense in signing him, especially this year, with the compacted schedule and Luongo getting older. So they, they needed a guy that they could, put in like more of a 1B role than just having a guy that's going to play, 10 or 15 games while Luongo's still, starting 65 games. I mean, that can't keep happening like as time goes on.
Yeah, you don't want to burn out Luongo, that's for sure. So why is he underrated? Why is Vinny Trocheck an underrated player?
I don't know. I mean, this guy, I love this guy. I mean, you could make the argument that that they wouldn't have been in position to even make this jump that they've made the last couple of weeks if it wasn't for him. I mean, he's a battler. He can score goals. He's fast. Just a really good player. And he did lead the OHL in scoring. I think his last year a junior. So. I mean, this is definitely a guy that's got some skills. I mean, he just needed the ice time, and I think originally a few years ago, everybody was looking at Barkov and Bukestad as the 1-2 centers for the next 8 or 10 years or whatever. Yeah. But now it's Barkov and Trocheck, and I don't know that Bukestad really fits in on this team too much longer, considering that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially considering like for a young guy, I mean, he's already had a lot of pretty serious injuries.
Yeah. He's power forward type.
So. Yeah, he's definitely not scoring like he was a couple of years ago, but I mean, he's playing a little better since he came back lately, but I don't know if he's a fit as a winger or as a third line center on this team, so wouldn't be shocked if he gets traded at some point.
Yeah, what do you think with the trade deadline coming up? Maybe Bukestad. Is there any other pieces that might be moved, or what do you think for Panthers maybe adding a piece?
I don't know. I think it's I wouldn't expect them to do anything big, because now that everybody's back, the teams, they're 8-2-1 in their last 11 games, so obviously they're going at a pretty good clip. So you don't want to. I don't think you want to change things around too much, but like I said earlier, I mean, I think they could use a better seventh defenseman, and they could, and probably more so, they could probably use a forward that could help them out on the power play and provide a little more secondary scoring. So those are the things that I think they'd be looking to add. I don't think they're looking to subtract.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought one of our commenters on the site today made an interesting point, and he was talking about leaving Bukestad exposed for the expansion draft, which I thought was a pretty. I hadn't thought of that, like thinking of the expansion draft and predicting who they're going to protect and not, because the assumption around here is that they're going to lose one of the defensemen, whether it's Petrovic or Pissick, to Vegas, and then and he said, maybe they'll leave Bukestad exposed and get rid of him that way. And I was thinking that's actually not a bad idea, because that's a player Vegas would probably take, because he's still a young guy. He's signed to a pretty cap friendly contract, and he's got a lot of talent. He just probably needs more ice time, maybe a change of scenery. And I was like, that's a pretty good idea, because that way you can keep your whole defense intact for next season. So I was like, that's actually a pretty good thought. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but I hadn't thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a good move if he needs a change of scenery and if he's not playing that well like he has so far this year when he's been healthy. So then how is March still playing? He seems like he's having a bit of a breakout year. Is it because
probably the best signing of the off season when you're talking, value for dollar. I mean, this guy's having his best season in the NHL. I mean, this guy goes hard, like every shift, every game. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but man, this guy is definitely out there trying hard every night, and he's definitely getting rewarded for it.
Seems like the new rules with less clutching and grabbing and a little bit less physical, less enforcers are on the ice. It's really opening the ice, especially for these smaller players like Mitch Marner and so on. And then for the Panthers, it's like for Trocheck and Marchessault. It's just they're opening up more ice for the smaller guys.
Yeah, definitely something to that. I mean, I've been following hockey since the 70s, so you definitely see that change in the game where you're seeing like, whereas before there was smaller players like St. Louis or whatever, 1-2 here and there, like having success. Now you're seeing a bunch of smaller guys like really making an impact in the game, and it's cool to see. Yeah,
it really is. Paul, do you have any prospects you want to mention?
Yeah, I wanted to question the 2016 NHL draft, guys. We talked about all these guys, Barkov and Trocheck and Bjugstad, all 25 and under. They definitely have a depleted prospect cupboard, but 2016, I think they did really well. What do you think of Henrik Borgstrom?
He seems to have a lot of talent. I mean, he played in second tier of junior in Finland, and now he's over at University of Denver. And from the highlights I've seen, man, he's got some really nice skills. I've seen him score some really nice goals, nice assists. So definitely, definitely needs to add some size. Bulk up a little bit, but he definitely seems to have the offensive skills. And I think when he was drafted, a lot of people were kind of like, who the hell is this kid? They kind of went off the board for him, but I think a lot of people that have seen him play and have seen some of the highlights that I've seen are pretty impressed with the pick now.
Yeah, and then in the second round they went with Adam Mashrin, who I'm a big fan of. I live just outside of Kitchener, so I try to get to a couple Rangers games, and he definitely stands out on the ice. Do you think he's going to be a Panther in the next year or two, or is it going to take more time than that?
I don't know. I hope so. I mean, I love what I've seen of him, because the one thing that kind of drives me crazy about the Panthers a little bit is even the highly skilled guys, there's a reluctance to shoot there that drives me crazy sometimes, and that's what they need the most, I think. Somebody that just has that desire to get shots on goal and to score goals. And I'm real excited about him, and I'm hoping next year he's at least in the AHL, and then maybe the year after that he's with the Panthers.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Is there any defensemen or goalies that are really in the ready to make the next step? Like Matheson already came up. Maybe Mackenzie Weegar. He's a late round, 7th round pick from like 2013.
He's definitely improved a lot. Like if you would have asked me about him like last year or 2 years ago, I would have said, nah, I don't think this guy is going to make it to the NHL anytime soon. But this year he's definitely made some strides in the AHL, and I think his future's a lot brighter. And then you have McCoshen. McCoshen's probably the defenseman that's playing for Springfield that, you know, you're thinking, okay, this is a guy that's going to be in the NHL lineup in the not too distant future. But yeah, Uyghur definitely has a chance. You know, I'm interested to see him when they come back for training camp next year to see, you know, how close he actually is to making the jump.
And for goaltending, is there anybody, like I know they got Luongo and Reimer locked up for quite a long time, Luongo pretty much forever. Is there anybody close or could be competing for a backup role?
I'd say Sam Britton's got a shot now. I mean, because they have two veterans at the AHL level, and Rito Berra and Mike McKenna. Like he hasn't gotten to play in the AHL this year, but he's been like killing it in the ECHL, which I know that's 2 steps down, but I mean he's been, from what I've seen and read and heard, he's been dominant down there, and he did play 1 AHL game, and you know he had a 1-goal game, you know, only allowed 1 goal. So I think he's definitely, you know, maybe getting ready to make that next step. But I'd have to say, like, the goalie prospect they're probably the most excited about is Montembeault, who's still in the Quebec League. He's probably the brightest prospect in goal they have. So I would expect Britain that him and Britain will be the AHL goalies next year, and we'll, you know, as time goes on, we'll see which ones closer to, you know, making the move to the NHL. But I think they're pretty set with Luongo and Reimer now, so I don't see that changing, you know, that tandem changing unless all of a sudden Luongo, you know, starts looking his age, you know. But that hasn't happened yet, so I wouldn't expect it to happen next year either. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, you said Montembeault, and he plays for Blainville Boys Brand, and they have a good chance of coming out of the queue. So hopefully he gets some Mem Cup time. He was on Canada's World Junior team, not this past time, but the year before as the 3rd goalie. But he wasn't on there this year. But you know, from what I understand, he's having another good year in the queue. So, you know, I would expect him to be one of the AHL goalies next year. Perfect. And one last quick question. A guy that kind of came out of nowhere and had a ridiculously points per game average, Jace Howerluck. He got hurt at the beginning of the year, hand injury, I believe. How's he look in Springfield?
He's been doing pretty good. He actually got injured here in training camp, and then when he was out for a while, and then when I think in his first game in the AHL after he came back from the hand injury, somebody like cheap shot at him and he got a concussion and he hurt the hand again or something like that. So he was out for a long time in the AHL too. But since he's finally been back, he's been doing really well, and he's been putting up some pretty good numbers because that team, their AHL team this year has been kind of a disappointment, and they seem to be having a lot of trouble scoring. So that he's putting up nice numbers, you know, in spite of that, is a good sign. I think he might have had a pretty good, like an outside shot of actually making the team this year before he got hurt. He was doing pretty well in training camp. So that's definitely a player, prospect-wise, to take a look at next year, who's got a shot to make the team.
All right, awesome, cool.
All right, Todd, some great insight there, but before we leave you, what are your expectations for the Panthers now for this year? Are they going to make the playoffs, and can they win a round or 2?
Yeah, I think they are going to make the playoffs. I mean, as long as they can keep doing what they're doing now, you know, do I expect them to, you know, to keep going 8-2, you know, in the next 2 10-game segments? Mm-hmm. Probably not, but as long as they can, you know, keep close to that pace, I think they'll make it. You know, I think they're a little bit better now that they're healthy than the teams that they're up against for those, whether it's the third place in the Atlantic or the second wild card. I think they're going to squeak in, and I think they're going to be a team that whoever plays them in the first round is not going to want to play in. Is going to have a hard time with. Mm-hmm. Whether they'll win a round or not, I think depends on who the opponent is. If they get Montreal in the first round, I think they could win a round. If they get the Capitals in the first round, I don't know. I don't think they match up really that great against the Capitals usually. Mm-hmm. But
you never know.
I think they'll definitely be a tough out.
Mm-hmm. I think we all expected the Panthers to be up there. I think at the beginning of the year. But with the surge and them all coming together now, and a lot of those changes, like you mentioned, it does take a while to gel. And if they're all gelling at the right time, that's all that matters. And if maybe they can make the push, and maybe they can win a round or two. I think they got some experience at least last year, right? So that might have helped them
definitely.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that definitely always counts, especially in hockey that I've seen over the years. You gotta make the playoffs and take your lumps a little bit, and you learn from that, and you're better off the next time. So, I think if they make it in, they're good. They're going to be put up a good fight to whoever has to play them, and they actually might win a round. And depending on the matchups, maybe they can win 2 rounds. Yeah,
perfect. All right, Todd, thank you for coming on the show. Again, Todd is on Twitter at ToddLittle827, and you can also find him on litterbobcats.com. Thanks for coming on the show, Todd.
No problem, guys. Have a good night.
All right, Paul. My most recent blog was the top 10, of course, and I wrote about the top 10 trade deadline trades of the current decade. I've got a top 10 list. I even have, an honorable mention. I'll mention a few of them right now. I'll mention one of my top 2, and it's huge. It's Jeff Carter. That is my number 1 pick. That trade is so significant to the LA Kings roster in terms of how they played the last few years after that trade. They got Jeff Carter from the Blue Jackets for Jack Johnson and, of course, the first-round pick in 2013. Ended up being Mark Dano, and, of course, a couple of trades. He's not even there so much. But it was a landslide win for the LA Kings, which put them over the edge to be a top contender. Huge. And not only did they win that year, and, of course, Carter had the most goals tied on the team for the LA Kings and scored the game-winning goal for the Stanley Cup. They won again in 2014, and Carter was huge again, as him and Kopitar were the best players for the Kings that playoffs as well. A few other ones.
And he's still tearing it up. He's third in scoring right now, so goals scored. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
My number 3 was the St. Louis trade from the Lightning to the Rangers in 2014. The Rangers made the finals, and I think it was pretty much on the back of Marty St. Louis. You're trading the leader, the captain of the Lightning to the Rangers, and it changed everything. I think the Rangers were kind of a bit of a middle-of-the-pack team in terms of contenders, but from pretenders to contenders with St. Louis, and with his mother dying and the team rallying with him to push the team all the way to the finals, they almost won the cup because of Marty St. Louis, in my opinion. First, the Rangers in goals. It was amazing. And, of course, in the trade, Tampa Bay got Callahan and a conditional first and a second as well. So, huge trade, and it was big for the Rangers, in my opinion.
And don't forget the controversy of the whole Martin St. Louis and Steve Yzerman over the Olympics, and then not requesting a trade, and Yzerman waiting, and finally ended up getting something from Martin St. Louis, which is kind of crazy. I think Yzerman did a pretty excellent job in getting at least something, because everybody knew St. Louis did not want to be with the Lightning. So it helped the Rangers, but stuff. It helped the Rangers, but also the Lightning got at least something back out of it.
Yeah. I'm not too sure how well they've done with the picks, because they traded both those picks away for other things, other pieces of the puzzle. There's a big trickle-down effect in that trade.
The big trade tree.
But St. Louis, after what happened with Team Canada and everything, and then that and the Yzerman thing, yeah, I guess it was good that he got something out of trading their captain. And then another big one, and it didn't have too much to do with the playoffs that year, was my number 6, and that's Ben Bishop going to the Lightning for Corey Conacher in a fourth back to the Ottawa Senators. And at that time, Conacher was playing very well and putting up some decent points out of nowhere that year. And Bishop wasn't getting, much ice time between the pipes. So nobody expected the Bishop to be this good. He just had some backup, maybe potential. And wow, what a steal for Yzerman in that trade. And they got Bishop that year. He won and got a shutout in his first game as the Lightning. But, of course, they didn't make the playoffs that year. But the following year, bam, they turned Lightning from non-playoff team to a contender and took them all the way to, I think, the finals that year. So that's amazing. And the turnaround from a pretty small trade, you would think at that time, to a huge trade, and still Bishop playing really well for the Lightning.
Yeah, I really like your 2 Penguins trades that are in the top 10. We're not going to name them, so you have to go check out the blog. But yeah, I think you did an awesome job filling out this list, Peter.
Yeah, it's a lot of research. Took me a couple of days to figure it out. I wanted to go even further in the full decade, but I thought, no, this list is still pretty good with the current decade. And you can even see just from the teams that I picked and a lot of the trades, it's the Kings, it's the Pens, the Lightning, and a lot of these were big factors, and maybe even the Hawks, for these teams going really far. And these are the stronger teams that added the right pieces at the right time to help them go deep in the playoffs. So it's pretty cool looking at some of those trades.
Yeah, right, and some of them seem so simple that they ended up being so awesome.
For sure. All right. So again, that blog is already on JablamHockey.com, and we're going to tweet it out again. Paul, what do you have for our fantasy tip?
Our fantasy tip, we're going to go with the last 2 weeks of fantasy hockey regular season. Can you believe it, Peter? We're almost into playoffs for fantasy hockey.
Wow. You know what? It's been that long. I think I've fallen apart on both my teams because it's such a long season that it's like, I haven't been following it that hard the last couple of weeks. I know I was first in one of them, but I probably dipped to like third or fourth now.
Yeah, so I've dived deeper into the games per week. I'm really into this games per week right now because it's such a big deal if you have if your trade deadline hasn't come up yet. I know the trade deadline for some leagues are 24th. Mm-hmm. I think I have 3 or 4 that are tomorrow. So I've been sending out trades like crazy, trying to offload guys from teams that only have like 5 games in the next 2 weeks if I'm trying to contend for the playoffs. If I'm already in the playoffs, I'm looking further ahead for the next March 13th to 19th week because I know I'm already in the playoffs, so I got to worry about that. But teams you want to stay away from, Calgary Flames only have 5 games in the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
The Ducks have 2 in the first week. Arizona has 2 in the second week. Edmonton has 2 in the first week, only 5 games as well. So look out for those teams. A team that you want to target, Minnesota Wild have 8 games, 4-4 in the next week. They only have 1 this current week, 20th to 26th. So if you held off, then now's your time to pounce on the Minnesota Wild guys. Try and go for like an Eric Stahl or maybe like a Justin Tucker or Zucker, Justin Zucker, Matt Dumba, Ryan Suter, a couple of those guys because they play 4 games the rest of the year. So they'd be a really good team to target. Other than that, not much else to give you tips on. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it should help some people if they're following closely with their teams and how many games certain guys are playing. So that should help.
Yeah,
all right,
and
Paul.
The blog is up on Jablam Hockey as well. There's a huge chart, and it's pretty easy to read. It's pretty easy to follow. So check it out if you want to dive deeper.
For sure. Now time for the friendly bet, Paul. All right. We put it out there for the poll for people to see what people were thinking about. But first, let's get our thoughts. Paul, what is the poll exactly, and what is our bet?
Who is going to win the Atlantic Division, Peter?
And I'm going to go with the regular favorite. My pick is still the Montreal Canadiens.
Interesting.
I still think Carey Price will pull it out for them, and when you have to bear down, he's going to win big games for them.
Yeah, so like the other night, that was a ridiculous save to save that game.
Wow, and to take them into the shootout for sure. Carey made a huge price at the end in overtime. Wow. And like I was telling you before, Paul, it seems like almost every single night now there's a save of the year candidate. So some of these goals are making some spectacular saves. Can't even say it, but it's just amazing the way the goaltending has been. And it seems like with the smaller pads, they've had to come out with the bigger saves. It just seems like it.
Yeah.
So it's a great to watch some of these goaltenders down. Carey Price, I think, can take his team to win the Atlantic. And your pick, Paul?
I think Florida could move up. I really do think they have a chance. Yeah. They got some games in hand. The Barkov-Huberdeau coming back. We talked to Todd, and he also mentioned Petrovic came back, so that's a big deal on their back end. Ekblad is hopefully going to turn it around, but even talking to Todd tonight, it's just like, yes, I'm in with Florida. I think they can pull off the division.
Yeah, I'm a fan of watching all these kids play on all these teams, and Florida has a lot of versatile weapons on their team. So yeah, they could pull it out. It's still a bit of a stretch, but they might be able to. And if Reimer keeps on playing well too, they have a shot.
Yeah. So our Jablam poll, the winner was the Ottawa Senators. 38%. Number 2.
I was a little shocked with that.
Yeah, number 2, Toronto Maple Leafs at 25%. And then the Montreal Canadiens at 19%. And then Boston, Florida, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, the rest of the U.S. teams, 18%. Which brings us to our friendly bet, Peter.
Yep.
I think a U.S. team is going to take the Atlantic Division.
And I'm picking Canadian team.
All right. So you got Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. I get Boston, Florida, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Detroit if they got a shot.
Yes. Well, they make the playoffs every year. They should make it this year, right?
Well, they have to win the division. They might make playoffs or have a chance at making playoffs. They don't have a shot at the division, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So this is for the division win.
And update us, Paul. How are we doing in our recent friendly bets? How is Nazem Kadri playing?
Oh, Nazem Kadri's going to get hurt tonight. We're recording this Thursday night. He's... Oh, look, I just looked up. He's currently got hurt by... whose shot did he get hurt by? Kevin Klein's, sure. Kevin Klein's shot. So he's out with a broken ankle. He's out 6 weeks, which is till the playoffs. He has 25 goals right now. Our bet is you have 26 and over, and I have under 26. So if he gets hurt tonight, sorry, Nazem, I win the bet.
And for the other ones?
Penguins players in top 3. I have to have 3 or more, and you have less than 3. Right now, Phil Kessel is, I think, in 11th.
Yep, it's close.
Evgeny's in 6th, and Crosby's in 2nd, going to be 1st by the end of the year. So Kessel's only up from 15 by 2 points, so it's going to be a tight battle.
It's getting close.
And then our final number of Canadian teams to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Peter, you're looking just outstanding. You picked 4+. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now in the playoffs as we speak.
So it's close. It's close. Some
and
interesting bets.
Yeah, a lot of bubble teams. So if Florida, Boston move up, and Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, one of them falter, Calgary I don't think is going to make it. So could be interesting.
It should be. All right, that's it for this episode. Please go on our website, and check out our game notes, especially helping you when you're listening to our podcast. Some cool stuff, especially that KHL video. It's pretty cool. And you can even check out that top 10 blog that I wrote, and we've got more of those coming. Also, we have the special pre-trade deadline episode. That's going to drop in like 2 days, so check that out. That'll get you set and ready for March 1st, the actual trade deadline. And again, next episode, we'll have a Jablam Junior Hockey update and maybe a Team ISO and some other stuff. And obviously, we should be talking about some of those trades next episode.
Clarify, Peter, 2 days, which is Sunday. We're going to put it out Sunday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right,
sure.
Sweet. It'll be there for the beginning of the next week. Sweet. I like it.
All right. Perfect. And if you haven't, again, resubscribe or subscribe to our show right on iTunes, Jablam Hockey, and rate and review us if you can. See you guys next time.
Bye.